So this is the September 9th, 2005 meeting of the Northampton Energy and Sustainability Commission. And we have a quorum. So I will call the roll. Rachel. Deb.
Present.
Angie.
Yes.
Ben. Katie. Oh, yes. Katie.
Yes.
Louis.
Yes.
Eric.
Present.
All right. What's the first item on our agenda, Gabi?
Approve, public comment and then approve meeting.
Oh, that's right. So we have time for public comment. And I understand the convention is to do one from the room, then one from Zoom. So we have one member of the public with the raised hand. Is there anyone in the room who wants to make a public? And is this comment not related to your item on the agenda? It's not. Okay. In that case, Denise, please speak. And I think you may have to push the button on that, or did we even turn it on?
Okay. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Is that true, Eric?
Eric, is she
You
on?
nod your head if you can hear me.
I think he cannot. Let me.
I can hear you.
Is the green light on?
Yes.
So we can hear you.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, okay. All right. So I just wanted to ask if there is some Northampton City implication for the Ridwell things that are going around now. So I don't know if you guys are aware of it. And maybe I got on a mailing list because when I was on the West Coast, I saw this. So Ridwell is this outfit that collects all your plastic waste and really does something with it, I guess. So they're doing all these public information sessions. But I didn't know what the potential was for impacting the program that the city of Northampton has in terms of solid waste disposal. So I just wanted to check with you all to see if you knew.
I'm going to look to Deb to help me. The rule is that we don't answer, we just hear this.
Right, okay.
Is that right? I think that's right.
Yes, it's just a request for
So that's
thinking about it and
it's
information.
news to me, and I want to know about it.
Okay, great.
And Alex Bowman, please unmute yourself and comment.
Hi, Alex Bowman, Northampton. Bikes need more of a place. They need a focus in our climate action strategy. Most car trips are under 2 miles, which means every short trip shifted to bikes can make a measurable impact on emissions. To meet our climate goals, our roads must be designed so students can bike to school and families can reach groceries, daily needs, and recreation areas safely and with low stress, not just trails for recreation. Safe bike routes expand mobility for kids, seniors, and people who can't afford a car. They improve public health, relieve traffic and parking pressure, and make our streets places where we see our neighbors' faces and stop to talk. If our investments in density, conservation, and recreation aren't accessible by low-stress bike, they're not fully serving climate action. And the urgency is real. Every time we rebuild or redesign a road without prioritizing bikes, we lose the chance to touch it again for 20 years. Low-stress bike networks must be treated as core climate infrastructure, and every project should be tested against that standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Is there anyone from the public in the room who has any public comment? Okay, thank you very much. And the next agenda item is probably adopting or accepting, approve,
Yeah.
that's the word, approve the minutes. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Eric seconds, Deb motions, so I will call the roll. Eric Winkler,
In favor.
Louis Hasbrook,
Yes.
Deb Clemmer, Rachel Flynn Kasuba,
Yes.
Angie Gregory,
Yes.
Katie Deppen,
Yes.
and Weil, yes. I want to throw in a teeny tiny agenda item, which is this is Director Katie Deppen's first NESC meeting as Director of Central Services. Totally not to put you on the spot, but do you have any things that are on your mind?
Well, thank you, Ben, for the introduction. Looking forward to sitting on this committee. There's a few of these I've kind of viewed on my own when I was in central services previously in a prior position, but looking forward to working with you all and, assisting where we can. So thank you.
Thanks, Katie. And welcome, yeah. Next agenda item.
Sunday. guidance.
Oh, right. So the next agenda item is Denise Lello with an update on Sunday.
Okay, thank you. I sent some slides ahead just so you guys could look at something. Okay, great. I think everyone was here last time we met in July and heard except for Katie. This will be new to you. But this is an event that we started planning in July, and it's an offshoot of the Sunday organization started by Bill McKibben to mark the beginning of Climate Week in New York City, but also to give people a reason to celebrate the gains that we've made in renewable energy and also energize them for the hard work forward. So our idea was to create an event that would do a number of things, but the first thing we wanted to do is let the community know what the city is doing and has done, and how we're moving towards meeting our climate goals. And we thought that the departments represented on this committee would be a great way to introduce that work. We also were aware of the rollout of the new Northampton, East Hampton energy electrified Northampton, East Hampton program. And so we wanted to give that a little more publicity and then give an opportunity for people to take advantage of what remains of rebates for EVs and solar panels and heat pumps. So we wanted to get that out in the public and get them a chance to see vendors, meet vendors, look at equipment. So the way we've structured the event, we're hosting it at Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School, which is turning out to be just the perfect venue. And the people there have been wonderful. So the event is from 1 to 4. We are going to have 2 speaker sessions because we want people to have time to circulate and look at, visit the tablers and the vendors and have some fun. So we're going to have speakers inside in the library, and there's a wonderful presentation space there with a great screen and ample seating for at least 80 people. And then other people could stand. So if we get a huge turnout, it'll be okay. And then in the cafeteria, we'll have tablers, and they will be a variety of things that I'll show in another slide. Outside, we'll have exhibits of equipment that you might not be able to bring indoors, in addition to games for children, some community art creation, and some food. We'll have a food truck and some ice cream. So you can go to the next slide. So the speakers that we've lined up are pretty impressive. Our idea was to have sort of a big picture. What's happening at the state level? What's the history of what climate legislation has been passed at the state level, how it's moved us forward? And then what are the pending bills? What should we be looking for? What should we be supporting in the legislature? Given the new rules in the state legislature, things are moving much more quickly than they have in the past. And we're hoping that things will move out of committee before it's too late. And so that's sort of very timely because a lot of those bills need to get out by October. So Peter Wingate, then, thank you for making that connection, Ben, is going to sort of have a regional view of, he's the energy director with Community Action Pioneer Valley. And so he will be talking about some of their major accomplishments and their future plans in the Valley. So that's session 1. Then we'll have a break so people can go and visit tablers, talk to the speakers, whatever they'd like to do. And then our second session will be led by Ben, who will talk about how sustainability can lead to cost savings. So as we move away from fossil fuels and try to electrify the city, and in the bigger picture, beyond just the city buildings, how are we going to accomplish that? What are some of the routes that we've identified? And then Carolyn will represent the Planning and Sustainability Department. We'd like her to talk about how the sustainability plan is being used to move us towards the 2030 goals, because honestly, most people in Northampton probably don't even know this plan exists and that there are goals. And so, how can we make this more visible and get people to buy in and really help? And then also picture Main Street. So how is that going to help us and give us a good idea of what we're hoping to achieve there? Sophie Bertano, who's the new sustainability coordinator at East Hampton, will be next up, and she will be sort of mirroring the same presentations combined, Ben and Carolyn. And then we just recently got a speaker from Smith College to talk about their geothermal project, how that came about, where they're going with it, what it's going to accomplish in terms of the campus reduction in fossil fuel use. And that's going to be Beth Hooker. So that's our speakers. And then the next slide. So we're still acquiring tablers. There's a lot of enthusiasm. I'm sure that solar installers are kind of caught between, wow, it'd be great to have more business, and how are we possibly going to get this all done by December when it has to be installed if you want a rebate. So that's a really great innovation. And then heat pump installers, we have a number of those, 2, I think, actually confirmed, maybe 3 signed up now. We have an e-bike dealer and an e-landscaper, and we're hoping for a couple more. We will have Revise, who is the contractor with Electrify Northampton, East Hampton Tabling, and also Hannah Davis, our community advocate, will be there. We're hoping that the city offices of the DPW and building department and maybe planning and sustainability, but since Carolyn's already talking, she may not want to do that. This is a big ask. This is Sunday afternoon, and I have to say, I am so impressed with the amount of sort of volunteer enthusiasm from people who are already working so hard to come and make this happen. So we're hoping to have some information. DPW is kind of critical office, right, in terms of climate change and the work that we have to do. So I'm hoping they can spare somebody if we don't have a big rainstorm or something, maybe. And then the building department also, because it's our residential building retrofits that are like really critical to this transition. So, and then we'll also have a variety of orgs. So we haven't heard from Green Valley Energy. Maybe someone from LEA might represent them. I don't know. So we're still working out some of these things. I've written to a couple of people from CET. I know a lot of the big guns at CET are going to be in New York already. So, and they'll have Mothers Out Front tabling with their neighborhood electrification program. The Northampton Climate Emergency Coalition, energy coaches will be there, and a number of other orgs. Citizens Climate Lobby. Yeah. Okay. So we're still assembling exhibitors. We have an e-bike, a solar heat pump, and solar demo for outside. We have had no EV dealers but yet. And here's the other thing. When I was growing up, Sunday was the day you went to the dealer and looked at cars, but now they're all closed on Sundays. And, these events are kind of hard for them to staff. So we'll see. But probably what we're going to have is a lot of owners, EV owners, who will be able to show off their vehicles and people look inside and see what they're like, not really go for a test drive, but at least see how they work. And then we have one e-landscaper who will be exhibiting. Okay, and then we'll have games and art creation for kids, so people are encouraged to bring their kids and do some sun-related art creation and maybe a mural that we can display later. And then the last thing is we will have food to sustain people through this long event. So there will be a vegan pizza truck selling pizza and Harold's ice cream. So it should be fun. So if anybody has any questions about, there is going to be a meeting on Friday for speakers to sort of iron out, make sure that everybody's on page with our expectations and what they think they want to talk about. And I'm sorry, Ben, I think I missed a message from or an email from you. I know you wrote to me about your conversation with Carolyn about how you were going to divvy things up. And honestly, the number of emails regarding this event is just enormous and I couldn't find it. So forgive me if I sort of got your characterization of your talk a little off.
Can I just, I'll just respond to
done.
that one little point, which is, if it's okay with you, you've already got us one right after the other. Carolyn and I were kind of planning on just tag teaming across the sustainability milestones, essentially. And I'll be able to get the topic of cost effectiveness into the portions where we're talking about those types of projects.
I think that sounds
So-
great. Yeah. One less transition and
We're just going to kind of be a
Sure.
team and
okay.
if that's good.
Sounds good.
Right.
Any
Are-
other questions or?
Any questions, comments, or anything from the commission?
I was just curious about the date. I was able to look it up, but you don't have a date listed anywhere.
Oh,
But I'm assuming
The 21st.
the 21st.
Yes.
And the best way for people out in the world for us to like go and share like a link about the event. It looked like there was just a Climate Action Now link. Was that right? Action Network
Yeah.
has the event listed. Is there anywhere else?
Annie. I had cards with the QR code, but that QR code is outdated. And so it's not going to help you. But it does have the date. So I can give you this. And what I will do is I will send the commission, a flyer that we have. So we have a bilingual flyer. We have a social media flyer that's like a little better for posting on social media. So we can send those over. to you all. Hopefully you can see some signs around town. And yeah. So yeah, thank you. I just wanted to put this little logo up here and I forgot it didn't have the date on it.
This one does.
Oh,
Yeah. Good. Does anyone else on the commission have any questions or comments?
Just to clarify, I think I heard you say you were going to send something around that we can also email out to various.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we have a comment from Tina Cornell. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I've been working with Denise on this and getting the publicity and the word out is really important. We do have the Gazette responded to us today that they're going to cover it hopefully beforehand. And we've been putting out yard signs, trying to get flyers up. If you go on the sunday.earth website, you can actually find our event listed on the National Sunday page. And there is information about our event there and a place to register. So the QR code that we've put on, we had to update the QR code. We had a problem with the first one that we used. The QR code will bring you to the link to the sunday.earth registration. And again, we can send out PDFs of the flyers and any other information you guys need to help spread the word, because right now it's all about getting people there. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments from public? All right, I have a few questions that maybe, can you back the slides up? One more. One more. There we go. Okay, so for Valley Green Energy, our plan is to have Gabi join Hannah at Hannah's table, and we will have some flyers about, or some basically the standard literature that VG gives us.
Oh, good.
So I think we're gonna have that covered as
Good,
part of
good. Okay, great.
the community action part, whatever it is, energy partnership, whatever the thing's called. So I think we have that covered.
Great.
And I would say, have you reached out to anyone at the DPW and
I did. I wrote to Rich.
Okay, Rich would be the person.
Yeah.
That's probably the best move, and unless anyone has any better suggestions.
I think yeah. So I should just keep writing to Rich.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long walk for them to get there, and I don't know. It may, again, it's a Sunday. Staffing is already an issue. I could see them just not having the capacity.
Yeah. Maybe we can just put a sign in front of the transfer station and then they'll see it.
I don't even know what the rules are about asking for like public communications at the train.
Actually, it was very nice. So Tina Ingman wrote to Alan Wolf and he said, go for it on the city property. So that's why you have one out front here. And
great.
So, except he said, please get permission from the schools, each school individually. So that's what we're doing. Yeah.
And then the last one, just because I'm just looking at your list of unfilled things. We do have Louis Hasbrook here for a few minutes anyway. And I guess what I would ask you, Louis, is not, will you commit to do such and such, but what do you think is the reasonableness of having that expectation at all? Or is it just not something that the building department can handle? I'd love to have your sense of it.
I think we can certainly try. And the thing that ends up happening is that what we talk about is like how many nails you put in here. It's very, very nuts and bolts. And so big picture, I'd have to try to put something, excuse me, together to have a look at the big picture. But maybe just sort of a sets of codes out there trying to show people how complicated it is. Like here's this book, which is several hundred pages. And then
probably not.
So the goal is to scare the bejesus out of people so no one ever builds anything?
No. I mean, the goal is to show people how hard people are working to make houses safe and efficient.
So here's one suggestion, Liz, and I don't know if this is even feasible. So I attended a webinar about a new bit of software that's been developed at Bentley University with a couple of collaborators, MIT's, Office of Data something. And I forget the name of the tool, but it's available for every city in the state. And it's using state data. Now, they were not really responsive when I asked about, okay, what really is this data that you're using? But you can look at given the data, the percentage of homes that have been electrified, the percent, and what percentage of your goal you've reached. So if your goal is like 30% of our houses are going to be done by 2030 or whatever, it will give you a graphic that sort of tells you that. Now, that data is, not perfect. And so question is, is that the kind of thing that would give people a visual of here's where we've gotten so far, not very far, and here's where we have to go. And
So that seems more like a policy goal, like, it's not something the building department does, it's something they facilitate. You know what I mean? So I would be really interested in that tool and would explore it. But I don't know that it directly answers kind of what they do. So much as theirs is just here are the rules.
Yeah.
One thing we could do is the Green Communities Act, the energy, HERS ratings, home energy. Sorry, brain dead. The HERS ratings of the new construction and watch how it's changed since we started tracking it since 2009.
That'd be
And
great. That would be great.
That would be really cool.
that's the one point and wave thing that we could probably come up with.
I love it. If you just do that and you consider, or whoever considered a table and talk about that, that would be wonderful.
Sure, I can do that. We can do that somehow. We'll find a way.
Okay, so that's really
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. Yeah.
cool. Thank you very much. Gabi, what's next on the agenda?
We're gonna talk about.
Oh, yeah. Let me share a slide. Okay, probably good enough. Is it? Yeah. Oh, okay. So I hope I shared with everybody the feasibility study that we got for a geothermal conversion for the high school. So this was in two phases. We kind of had an initial feasibility phase, and then when that passed muster, we did the much more detailed phase. So this really looked at kind of like all the costs, a lot more of the geology, and the question was basically, how can you fit a sufficient borehole field into the available area to satisfy the heating and cooling needs of the high school? It's a pretty big building. It doesn't have the best envelope in the world, but as I think I've discussed before in this group, we've kind of dialed it in so that we know that we can plug and play low temperature hot water, which is what you produce with geothermal to water, for the entire building and satisfy its thermal needs, because we've been turning down the temperatures on the boilers there to see how low we could go, basically. So we know we can do it. And so then the question is would it fit? They found a way to make it fit. And this thing talks about inclined drilling, but basically if you can have slant drilling in one direction and straight in another, you can fit more boreholes in the same surface drillable area. So the proposal would be to put the entire bore field inside the parking lot of the high school. They did a whole lot of regulatory review, and like I shared the document, and I'm happy to go over any details, but I want to get to the highlights of it. So they did load analysis, and one of the things that I think is most important, this is like critical about all geothermal projects, is what is the balance between heating and cooling? And over the long term, are you increasing the temperature of the earth because you have too much cooling, or are you freezing your borehole field because you have too much heating? You don't have those in balance. Now, the good thing is that with heating, you also get the heat of compression, whereas when cooling, you have to actually reject the heat of compression. So you don't have to have perfect balance. If you have heating, kind of at 60% and cooling at 40%, you're going to be okay. So it turns out that if we have like 90% of our peak load satisfied with the borehole field, we can kind of stay within the keeping it balanced essentially for infinite years, that we're just balancing it over the years because of the balance of the heating and cooling loads. And that's helpful because it allows us to fit the borehole field that we need into the parking lot area. They have done a cost analysis. So basically, the total cost of the project is something like $11 million. So that's why I wanted to bring this to this group. It's like, this is a big amount of money. 30% of that project will come back as investment tax credit. And unlike your residential geothermal, because this is large commercial, it falls under the same category as geothermal drilling to make electricity out of super hot rock. And drill, baby, drill is good. So we get to keep the investment tax credit for that, just like there are lots of investment tax credits for oil drilling. So here's a nifty way where it benefits us. So that one is actually pretty safe. Then if we have all US materials, which we can assure that we can do, we get another 10% in the investment tax credit. So that's a big chunk of it back. Mass save, we're going to get some incentive, although it's so large, it's going to be a custom incentive. And then the balance of it, the concept is to try and use a municipal bond for some portion of it and take the portion that would pay for itself in savings and use what's called an ESCO model to basically have a company that supports the engineering firm that provides the turnkey project, pay for it up front, and we pay for it over some period of time. That financing component has not yet been worked out, but that's the basic kind of bird's eye view of how we think we can pay for what ends up being, after incentives and tax credits, a $7 million project, which is still not small. So there's our net project cost. So that's kind of what I should have used this table. Eric, yes.
With that kind of a project, do we have to like go to have a citywide vote or something? An override? Is that like is that so large that we actually have to?
Oh, you mean like Proposition 2.5 override? Probably not, right? Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to, if it was necessary. So I have it from Charlene Nardi that, well, so remember, we have this really, really good bond rating. And she said, in fact, we need to borrow a certain amount of money. And I said, boy, have I got a project for you. So her appetite for borrowing is going to determine that, plus whatever the terms of the rest of the financing is going to determine really whether it can happen or not. And one reason I'm bringing this to you guys is because I'd really like a sense. I don't know that we need a vote. I just really want a real sense from you of, given the alternatives, because there are other things that you could also borrow money for that would also make sense. In fact, I'm going to share some of those ideas. So there's some PV projects that also could potentially have a good payback period. Also, in this case, have a time deadline. In other words, we need to actually have purchased materials for solar before September 2026 to be able to get the investment tax credit for these larger but sub 1.5 megawatt PV projects. So I'll talk about those in a minute. I wanted to talk about this one, but so that's the kind of the big question. I do want to share with you kind of the life cycle cost. Yes, Rachel. You sure? Okay. So this is kind of their estimate of costs, and it could be about $2 million less It's amazing. This experience about talking about a million here, a million, it's crazy. But so it could be about $2 billion less if we get the right permissions to handle water on site. And so they are making an estimate based on the idea that all of the water has to be disposed of offsite. And that's very expensive, all that water handling, the produced water from when you drill. So it's possible with the right kind of coordination with the DPW and kind of approval about their weir systems. They basically have these tanks, that settling tanks, and they can handle the water. And then they actually let it soak into the ground over time and dispose of it on site. So if all of that, and the report goes through in quite a bit of detail about all the rigid requirements for cleanliness of the water before you can do that. And they won't really know until they drill that first well and find out how much water we're producing, what's the character of it, all that stuff. The ability to not have to centrifuge it and all these other things that they do could probably drop $2 million off the project cost, which would be nice. But they're making the assumption that they have to do it the most expensive way. Okay, so the important thing, we can go back over all of this stuff. The important thing about the life cycle cost is basically geothermal is really expensive to install and pretty cheap to run, right? And so what we don't have is an option to do nothing. So we have 2 chillers. They are critical to school operation. They're well past their expected lifetime. They're functioning, not great, but they use a refrigerant called R22, which has been illegal for a decade or more. I can't remember how long, but it's an old refrigerant. Very, very, if we needed to replace it, it would be very expensive to get it essentially on the quasi-black market. And they're old. They're near end of life. So replacing the chillers would definitely cost something, right? So we're talking millions of dollars anyway, with no additional benefit. Just now we have chillers again. And so that overall life cycle cost is higher than geothermal because geothermal is so low cost to run. I will argue that their estimates about the efficiency of air source heat pumps is too pessimistic. And so I would suggest that perhaps air source heat pumps and continuing to run a boiler and a chiller are actually about the same. But that's just my own opinion at this point. Just like I know we can run them more efficiently than they rated them, but still, from a heuristic point of view, we could make a decision to say we want to replace the chillers. We're going to replace them with an air source heat pump that has as much capacity as we can get, and we'll use the electricity when it's the most efficient choice, and we'll use gas when it's the most efficient choice. We'll give up on this idea of actually decarbonizing, right? Because we're going to have to continue using boilers if we size them that way. But we'd make a lot of progress, right? So like it's still something. So I'd argue it's a viable alternative that, has you have to replace these outdoor exposed items a lot more frequently than you do the borehole field. The borehole field should last for hundreds of years. If it stays balanced, it's your heat exchanger forever, and occasionally you have to replace a heat pump or some part of a heat pump. Yes.
Just a clarifying question. So we're looking at all 3 of these are part of the whole system. So you have the geothermal well field. You also need a boiler and chiller and an air source heat pump.
Oh, no.
So
Sorry. These are competing.
These are all
areas.
different options. So the geothermal well field would
Here, let me show you.
Would function
Wait.
potentially without an air source heat pump?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Oh, I should have explained that. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So the geothermal is a whole system. You do the geothermal, that's what you're doing. You're making your borehole field very expensive. You're buying your water source heat pumps, not as expensive. You're plugging them into the existing hydronic distribution system in the school in all of these cases. It costs more to install. over 25 years, it costs less to operate. The concept is that these savings are what we can use to pay off over a long period of time the balance of the cost that we can't finance or get covered with other incentives. These other ones have no incentives, and we'd have to pay for them ourselves, but we might be able to do that. And they have larger long-term costs, but again, who cares about 25 years from now? Some of us will be doing something else. But so this is the comparison.
But then I believe the proposal was that we would maintain the boilers as a backup.
Yes.
And the chillers would go bye-bye.
That's so functionally that's true. So the boilers would stay there as a backup, used very, very rarely. And why that has no replacement cost is because a boiler's lifetime is determined not by years, but by firing cycles. And so if it's only firing a few times a year in the peak load experiences, and there's a pretty reasonable chance, in fact, that we wouldn't need them unless there was like a power outage and the generator is enough to run a pump, essentially. That, we're very, very close to essentially having no boilers, but they're sitting there. And because their firing cycles are so infrequent, they can also last a tremendously long time. Yes.
So when you take the boreholes in the parking lot, you cover it up and then it's parking lot.
Yes. So, and just for those on Zoom, we should, I forgot to do it, but I'll repeat your question. So what happens with the parking lot? So what Brightcore, the company that did this project and would bid on the project when it, if it were put out, they have a kind of a sequential plan where they basically would take a certain part of parking lot, do all the borehole drilling that they can, all the laterals, pave that part of the parking lot and move over. So they try to keep as much parking lot available while they were building it, and then they would basically be parking lot again.
And I mean, this makes a lot of sense, and because we do have such a good bond rating, we do get very good interest, and so is there a lot of maintenance on the geothermal down the road, or?
There's less.
Yeah.
So actually, who could speak to this pretty well? Because smaller project, but the senior center is a geothermal project. The heat pumps would be, I don't know, newer, certainly, but Katie, do you have kind of any insight on?
So that's a good question. I mean, since my time here at the city, it's been 3 years, but the senior center basically, as a prime example, as Ben said, kind of the wells do exist there. There's a parking lot above it all. In regards to maintenance, I mean, we have a contract with Lorenz. They do a PM in the fall and the spring on the 2 heat pumps that are there. The heat pumps are smaller units and they do run frequently. I think the only issues we kind of have had is kind of a few minor kind of pump problems that we've had to deal with. But otherwise, outside of keeping up on the routine maintenance, like I said, at least since I've been here and the records I've seen, we haven't had any significant costs. And that building was put in, and I think we're on our 17th or 18th year with that building. So those units haven't been replaced since that I can recall of.
And you'd have to do maintenance on the boilers anyway.
Correct.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, we would do the same thing. We would basically, if this project went through, we'd work with whoever that contractor is to personally get hands-on training with the geothermal they install, and be involved with basically any of that maintenance is going forward.
So one thing, obviously, none of this is carved in stone. I'll get to you in a second, Eric. Is part of the proposal from Brightcore is that if they were ESCO financing a portion of the savings, they have skin in the game in achieving those savings. And so their concept of the turnkey would actually be that they would operate the system for us and maintain it. They were saying like 15 years, but I think that's a nominal, just for sake of discussion, number. But so in that sense, it might not impose the maintenance, whatever regular PM is involved, they would want to be doing that and be invested in doing that. But again, that's all to be
I
determined.
have one more part.
Okay, yeah.
It's quick. So what the money that the rebates and we would get from the federal money, what are the chances of those going away?
So as we all know, it changes by the minute and depending on which type of cheeseburger was eaten that day. Right?
Yeah.
So like on the one hand, I can't actually answer that question because of the form of government we now live under. But I have it on some authority from various companies who have a vested interest in getting the answer right, because of how much they've invested, that they believe that commercial geothermal drilling for energy is protected. But yeah.
Because it would be, with the rebates, it sounds more doable to pay back the money. Without it, it's, almost double. And
I think it's not viable. And part of the discussion I do want to have with this group is, okay, let's say, the king wakes up on the wrong side of the bed one day. What is our other set of options? But I want to get to Eric.
So I'd love to just follow up with that question because I think it's surprising that geothermal made it safely through the bill. But how do I say this without being disrespectful? It's drilling, right? So
Yeah.
it must be okay for this administration to support something like that, as opposed to something that like a bird might interact with, or something shiny that you can actually see from the ground. So
From the golf course.
I was surprised it made it through, but it did, and well, we should take advantage of it if we can. So actually, what I was going to ask is, I found the cost analysis to be lacking in detail in terms of like a pro forma. So I'm wondering, is there another?
Did you actually read the like the components of the costs? It's in there.
I scanned it. I did not read every single word, but I was hoping to see, for example, their forecast for energy savings and how they did the cost analysis on that. In there.
Forecast for energy savings is here.
And the avoided cost analysis that they're saying this is.
So each of these is based on one of those three alternatives, right? So the alternative to do nothing is not an option. So they assumed in all of these scenarios that right. So we've got our annual costs and savings. Here's our annual savings based. And again, this is an overview. We actually, I mean, we can definitely find it in the project, but I was the person who had to respond to their request for information for all the details, and like so, we to get the maintenance costs currently to be true about those, we got the contract costs from Katie to make sure that they were actually reflecting the real costs, energy costs they had. I think they used a standard escalator. I can't remember what it was for energy costs, but of course, as you know, all those escalators are wild guesses.
Okay, I'll go back through again. As compared to the Smith Voc project presentation, I found that to be a little more transparent about the costs and the basis for the savings associated with the project. Just
Right. And it is more straightforward because it's comparing do nothing to do this, one of these options.
Yeah.
And this is really comparing three options in the end, because doing nothing is not an option.
Right.
But it is kind of buried in there. A lot of these costs are in the like much earlier when they talk about like permitting costs. Like they get into the details of the costs of drilling, which is the source of all the cost. So it's in there, but it's dense. And there are appendices too.
I guess my point here is that because they didn't show the base case, the do nothing case, I think we're missing. We're missing. If we want to. If we have a hankering for spending $8 million on a project, okay. Status quo. What is the status quo? So
the status quo would be boiler plus chiller. So it would be where do they have the life cycle cost analysis?
The life cycle cost was 19 million, I believe.
No, it would be the 17. So this is
right.
So that's basically the base case where you recognize that those chillers are going to have to get replaced.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes.
So we have to do something. So even if we don't get any money back, it's still cheaper to do geothermal than
over the long term, right? So actually maybe this is the place to have that discussion about what if it's not like if there's no incentive, if there's no investment tax credit. I mean, it's not cheaper.
It's the third 14 million.
So
that's the life cycle cost.
So life cycle is the large number.
Yeah.
And the first cost after incentives. So if you take 13 and you add nearly 4 million to that, all of a sudden it's not better than the other two.
13 plus 4
plus 4 million, right? Roughly.
So that's 17 million, and the other one a little over 18 million.
Yeah. So
kind of right in the middle.
So it's basically equivalent. Mm-hmm. That's actually a good way to think of it. Mm-hmm. Even without the incentives, it's basically roughly equal to the 25-year life cycle cost of maintaining the current system, given the need to eventually replace those boilers. If you're firing them at the cycle we currently fire them, then they do get replaced sooner rather than later. Yeah.
If I can add that only considers the financial impact, right? So two thoughts. One, can we get creative with the contractor to say that they absorb the risk if the ITC goes away? Two, that maybe if it goes away and we still have to front it, it potentially is at cost or potentially a little bit more than the do nothing case, but that doesn't consider impact, right? Which we haven't talked about here. And I'm kind of interested of your perspective when we think about city goals, 2030 being net neutral, how big of an impact does this geothermal get us? And what's that percentage allocation compared to what we're otherwise doing? I feel like that's a critical part of the discussion.
Let's see. I don't have this worked up, but if you give me a second, I'd need to share a different screen. I had this presentation that kind of has like a nice bar graph of the Sarah, I'm going to stop sharing for a second so that I can find this thing and try to talk at the same time. But
come back to it. My assumption is significantly higher than the boiler.
Yeah. In terms of if we care about our goals,
to the right commission.
but not all of us, I mean, probably all of us here do, but like the world is not full of only one set of concerns. Let me share my screen just because I think it's a decent way to illustrate it, even though it's kind of rough. So let's see, here are carbon emissions. So basically take that orange bar and cut it almost down, cut it to almost about a tenth of itself.
Which one are we looking at?
The second orange bar, the second one, the Northampton High School.
You just put your cursor where it
Sorry.
would be.
Yeah, right. Can you guys see that? Yeah, you can. So basically the orange bar gets to the X, roughly. I mean, just as a way to kind of think about it.
But the blue increases.
No, the blue increases. So this is, remember, this is carbon emissions. So the blue increases to fill that. The blue increases to about, let's call it 300 megatons per year, right? So our new total is 300, which is still more than one elementary school, but it's the whole high school. It is a big part of our total emissions.
Yeah.
And just to kind of be clear, like this is the top emitters. Actually, I guess this is a nice one to look at it. So it's basically your top emitters are the middle school and the high school and Smith Voc. And if you put Smith Voc all together as one campus, they actually beat everybody else. That's another problem, working on it. Like that's a good chunk. And we have lots of potentially good news in some of the other places, but this would be the one big move. But it's not a phasable move, right? You got to do it all in one chunk.
If we didn't go with this option as the quote unquote solution for Northampton High School, what are the alternatives?
Yeah. So I think, and so I didn't ask this group I didn't push them on their assumptions about air source heat pumps. But the truth is, air source heat pumps have gotten a lot, air to water heat pumps, so air cooled chillers that are reversible. All the same terms, all the same thing, different, right? So they've gotten a lot better. They used to be using R410A, which is not as efficient as R32, which is a new refrigerant, which is not as efficient as some of the other refrigerants that are coming out, that can operate at extremely low temperatures at high efficiency. And so they made the assumption that one of the biggest problems with R410A is to get the capacity you need at low temperatures, you really pay a penalty in efficiency. But with R32, I know this is so geeky and detailed, but with R32, you actually can maintain capacity and keep your coefficient of performance well above 2, even at -5 degrees Fahrenheit. So that changes what you can do. The other thing is, again, the same way that we've been playing with the high school and dropping the boiler temperatures and seeing how low we could go, we haven't done all the things you can do. Once you've got a heat pump and you're trying to actually drop those temperatures even more, we can do interesting things with kind of how we start the building up in the morning to keep the temperatures low. So anyway, there are lots of tricks. So I believe that their assumption that the air source heat pump has an average coefficient of performance of, I think they said it was like 2.5. I think that's quite low for what we could achieve. So then we can get back some of that efficiency and get into the 3s range, which is still not as good as the ground source in the 5s range, maybe the 4s range, but still better. And in mild weather can get up into the COP of 4 range. The basic principle is the smaller the delta T, the smaller the thermal lift that you're asking that heat pump to do, the more efficient it can be. So I think, like if we either decide that we can't do a project this big, or there's objections about using the parking lot, because it's going to be a disturbance, or the investment tax credit goes away. I would actually argue that we should still look at an air source heat pump solution to try to get us 80%, 85% of our peak load, which would account for like 95% of our total heating, right? Because our peak load happens only very, very rarely. And then we can kind of like try and size them to cover the cooling load that we have. But new chiller, reversible chiller, heat pump, whatever we want to call it, will do what these current ones can't. The current ones turn on or off, and they're just one each, giant compressor, basically. And we get, like, when we turn one on, we get this giant surge of power and a big demand charge at the school. So we end up running them as infrequently as we can get away with before there are too many complaints. Does that feel like an accurate description, Katie? Yeah. We could get better performance overall when you have a modulating inverter driven air source heat pump. This is super techie. I apologize. But so that's what I think would be the alternative, at least worth pursuing, but it's still in the millions of dollars. So you're still floating a bond. Yes.
I like this conversation about like how we can maybe do adjustments or different scenarios, but I'm also wondering if we do, move towards an air source heat pump solution, is there an opportunity to like maybe eventually add the ground source heat pump to that scenario, or would you have to kind of revise it at the same time to
it would
do it
really
later?
It would be really bad to have to do that. Yeah, because the cost isn't going to go down. Well, actually,
You did a lot less of a well field if you had the air source heat, but like say this got shot down, you do the air source heat pump, then you have a smaller well field and a ground source, and the lower project cost overall for the geo.
not enough lower, because again, it's still that borehole field is the big thing. And so what happens is if you've got your air source heat pump, let's say we size the air source heat pump to 50% of our peak load, which is going to cover like 80% of our hours, right? So that's pretty good already, 50% of our peak load. And we're using the boilers, and eventually we come into a situation where the boilers are going to have to get replaced, which means, by the way, we're going to have to knock down a wall at the mechanical room in there to get them out and to maybe get the new ones in. That's going to get expensive. So we say, maybe we should go with this geothermal plan and do it outside on the pad where we were going to do this plan that we're doing, but we only need the difference. We only need what we need to make that extra load. Well, that's 50%. So that's still like most of the cost is still in there because there's the mobilization cost that doesn't matter per borehole. So it works. People do it. And I think that would be a reasonable thing to ask them of like, hey, can we split it? Can we get a better, can we get a doable project, even if we're mixing sources? Yeah.
So, but you think the geothermal is the best way to go as far as efficiency and cost? And
I do. I think that even if I kept on sharing them incorrectly. I'll stop this share. But even if we go with their assumptions, and we basically say that how are we doing on time? It's 5. Oh, Louis, he must already be gone. Yeah. Oops. I wanted his input. Well, we'll get it later. So even if we go with these assumptions, and we say, okay, let's pretend that our air source heat pump solution is equivalent to our boiler, so just take away their negative assessment of air source heat pumps. This is still the better deal. In fact, as Rachel was pointing out, even if we don't have the investment tax credit, they're still at parity. This group did, I don't know if we care about it, they did a social cost of carbon analysis of it to basically put dollar values on? Was that?
Be careful.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not sure where they put it. Right here. So here's our life cycle social cost of carbon is less, a little bit more than 500,000 versus, 1 or almost 3 million. So let's say we're close, a little bit better. Our air source heat pump's a little better than they say, and we get it at $1 million versus, $2.7 million. As a way of thinking about it, I think that's got some value, even if we don't put the dollar value that the EPA used to put on it.
I would also add that from a difficult to quantify, but impactful overall, like reliability perspective, user friendliness perspective, this general kind of mitigation against increasing electricity cost, geothermal is
Way to go.
the way to go. And everybody I know, both from utility experience and personal experience that has had geothermal, does not have complaints about it and is mostly satisfied. Whereas I think we've all probably had experience with air source heat pumps. It kind of works. There's some tweaking to get used to. It's this long ongoing process that when you have populations of, lots of people in a school, lots of opinions, can get complicated.
Yeah.
Whereas I think there's a benefit to a low maintenance, low headache solution that is, again, difficult to quantify sort of like this, but overall from a user experience perspective and just general, kind of moving things in the.
And that's huge though, if you spend all this money and then you have problems, so.
Yeah, and that's bound to happen with any technology,
Yeah,
right?
but-
But geothermal, because it's in some ways more simplistic,
Mhm.
once you get the boreholes drilled, is effective.
Mhm.
And I guess one question maybe related to that is, do we have any experience from the Smith campus and their experience with it in terms of either local things they've come up with, sediment rock, anything that they can have kind of shared that might be applicable to what we might run into that's unforeseen?
I know they have experience. This group, the Brightcore engineering group, did get a lot of information from them. They also, Brightcore, are doing a bunch of projects in the area. In fact, they've invited us. I should have brought this up. They have invited us to a field trip to Agawam, where we can go see one of their incline drilling sites. So I don't know. I don't want to
Be fun.
I feel like when I organize that, maybe it's 2 field trips, like one for us, and then depending on what we see, one for the school department or something, because part of this, I think, would be getting a lot of buy-in. And so I'd want to see, like, how loud is it? How clean is it? That kind of stuff.
Just from Smith though, because it's in my ward, so I hear.
Yeah.
The noise. There happened noise problems, but it's not ongoing. It's for short periods of time, and they know that it's going to be noisy ahead of time. So they've been very great about letting me know, so I can tell people, to expect it. It's been, for the size of the project it seems like it's been pretty smooth all along. As long, and you tell people, as long as people know what's coming, I think they're okay, and can deal with it. How long would it take to do this because parking is a huge problem there already.
Yeah.
The summer, if they could do the bulk of it over the summer, would be.
That's what we proposed, is they would basically start at the beginning of summer, potentially before the end of school, even in that spring, try to get the bulk of it done in the summer. And they would still have some additional drilling to be doing once the next school season started. But like, that's their concept. They're aware of that issue. There's no question. It's like parking will have to get managed and will be contentious.
But at least if we know ahead of time, we can maybe make a plan and something out.
So I mean, like, I didn't have like, oh, everyone vote on, should we do this? It's more like, do we have kind of a sense of the group? And I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing Eric is back. Okay, good. Whether, and I'm going to share with you in a little bit of time some solar stuff that's an alternative thing we could spend money on. So but we could, in fact, here we go. I'll just really quickly show you. Smart 3.0 makes potentially, so usually parking canopies are too expensive. You can't justify the cost to get the solar in. Smart 3.0 has some adders that may make it more cost effective. So there's a potential for a parking canopy over Jackson Street, a parking canopy at Leeds Elementary School, and then whoops, come on. Sorry, the screen thing keeps on unhiding itself, and then I can't click on the thing. No. And then and a rooftop potential solar project at Ryan Road. All of them in the 300 kW range, which is a lot. That will cover their and a little bit more their current use. As we electrify, not the whole deal. But if we're really careful, like what we're showing at Leeds, for example, is we had these big fans moving so much air all the time because we had old pneumatic controls. These new, smaller, higher efficiency fans moving the right amount of air and using carbon dioxide sensors to decide when to run it all. Even with electrifying heating and adding cooling at Leeds, we're only really probably increasing electricity use by about 4% because we've cut out so much of this other waste that was just ongoing. So I can't promise that would be the case at each of these schools, but we might be able to come still close. So it's not nothing to be able to do solar. It's dependable. It's urgent. Unlike the geothermal, the investment tax credit goes away in September of 2026 for these types of projects. And so we have to lock them in if we're going to do them. I do not have pricing yet or economics. On the rooftop one, it's likely that we could do a PPA. And as long as they can get us a price that's low enough, let them pay for it. Easy. The other ones, it is possible that the economics of a PPA don't work out. And we might decide, do we want to do carport solar, which just gets us solar energy, doesn't get us any other functions, right? But has a certain kind of reliability and lack of mystery that the heat pump story doesn't. So I feel like there's a kind of a comparison. You could make an argument to just float your bonds and get these carports in before the tax credit goes away and deal with geothermal another day. So that's kind of the dilemma I'm in right now, without the numbers for these ones yet. So it might not be as bad as I think. But it's, a few $1 million worth of projects there.
Good. First of all, good job to the team for identifying all of these and getting the details behind it. I would say, for what it's worth, just hearing that short version on the solar, I think geothermal from a total impact and reliability perspective would probably get my vote, assuming that the financial aspects could work out. And I think, I love the idea of using the bond rating and putting that to work, right? I've been working for a long time to get it there. So use that, take advantage of it. And at the same time, I wonder, given where the solar industry is, if there'll be, and we're starting to see this already, sort of on my work side, as solar contractors getting more hungry and interested in cutting good deals because they also know that they need to deliver projects by a certain time. And so I wonder if that gives us more negotiating power on the PPA rates or items like that, as well as, I'd say, the flip side of the geothermal maybe being around for longer is solar efficiency will go up too. So waiting a few years, even in terms of the technology advances we might see in solar, probably wouldn't outweigh the, tax credits, but might also just be something to consider. So think about that.
Okay. Eric.
Yeah, I think that we should really, we should pursue the geothermal more aggressively. And part of the reason I say that is because not so much, I'm not downplaying the value of solar, but there are external costs to solar relative to distribution that we cannot estimate at this point. I mean, these 300 kilowatt systems are going to create lots of disruption in the local distribution system and lots of costs. And while those costs may not necessarily be borne directly on the city or the customer, there are societal costs as well. And as a comparison, the geothermal just basically reduces load, electric load, to an extent that, and obviously we get the carbon emissions reduction, but you don't put strain on the electric system, on the grid. And I think that's, at least for me, I'm not patting myself, I think that's an interesting way to think about if it's one or the other. I think the geothermal is a slam dunk because you're not going to have to worry about an interconnection permit. And that may reduce some uncertainty, some risk associated with the project. So I like pursuing this. I also think that because the Trump administration did not disallow ITC on geothermal, we absolutely should go for that, because just
before they figure it out.
And if you think you can rush the solar projects in and still get ITC, you should do that too. But I'm just thinking about, like, how does geothermal compare to these solar projects? And one of the things that I see is that there's a lower risk on the interconnection process, and maybe a lower societal cost, which may not necessarily be factored in, but we can consider that.
Okay. Are there any other comments or thoughts? I feel like the summary of my takeaway is that your advice is to go hard on geothermal. Okay. Good. So I know we want to be quick, but so the next one I just want to share. And again, I shared this with you. I have talked with Andrew Lincolnholker and Crystal Fairman and Tim Smith over at Smith Voc about this, and kind of the way I wanted them. So the basic problem is their roof was. Oh, sorry. Did you? No. So their roof on buildings A and B, they're big, large surface roofs, which show up here in this. So here's building B, here's building A, are big flat roofs that could accommodate a lot of solar potential. But they were last updated in 1997. And so no one's putting PV on there until we re-roof. So they're going to have to re-roof sometime. I came to them with the assumption that it's hard to get MSBA, go through the MSBA process to get them to help you pay for your re-roof, and and then you still have to cover a big portion of that cost. If we could find a way to have the solar and the battery of a resilience project essentially pay for your roof, would you go for it? And they said, yeah, that would work. So the basic project here is a resilience project. It basically would provide 72 up to 72 hours of continuous power at what is currently an emergency location. So even though we have this hub concept in town, the place that has been regionally used as an emergency shelter is Smith Oak. So they have currently they have a generator that you actually you switch over to the generator cycle, and then a person has to go to all the different switches, double throw switches to switch from the regular circuit to the generator circuit. This would essentially seamlessly support the regular circuit and support various buildings over that time period, feeding the battery with solar power when it's available, discharging the battery to support emergency purposes, but also to drop peak load. So that's one of the first ways it pays for itself, is you keep your demand charges as low as possible by using the battery. Then you participate in all these grid services markets, basically doing demand response, feeding, having capacity, all these things that we can do to essentially get paid to put capacity on the grid when it's most needed. So that's how you kind of get paid. And so, we can see that we have a good percentage of critical load, and they looked at two options. Resilient Power One has the lowest life cycle cost, basically. They put it as a net present value at 20 years. What Andrew Lincoln-Hulker said was, find a way to finance this so that, essentially, what do we have to do to get it so that my net present value, fiscal summary here. My net present value at 20 years, instead of being still a negative, because we're paying for the roof, 20 years later, we still have, we're using those services to we haven't fully paid off the roof. How do I get it at 20 years to be zero? If at 20 years that can be zero, I'll go for it. And his argument was, we don't need resilience. If the grid goes out, we send the kids home. If you want resilience, maybe the city should chip in. That's basically was his argument. And I feel like that's actually a legitimate argument. Like, the resilience is going to serve all the people who would go to that emergency shelter site. So given that you guys have had a chance to see it, and it is a much easier to understand project, I just kind of wanted to get your response to that concept of bringing this to the mayor and to city council and say the city should chip in for some portion of financing this project, which helps us meet renewables goals and resilience goals, and also helps Smith Voc, but not in a way that pays off any of our obligations, under the law to Smith Voc. So that's kind of the question I wanted to ask.
Ben, what do you think the increment? So I think what I'm understanding is that this funds replacement of the roof.
Yep.
And so what is the incremental cost for creating the resiliency, the added energy security at this location? And can you define?
So the challenge is, so if you just did solar, if you were just like, I don't care about anything, I just want to get a bunch of solar, you could do all the solar, but you still have to put the roof on, and you're more net negative because the battery allows you to basically make more money. So if you did solar only without the battery, you don't have any resilience, but you do, but it also, you're not making as much money, so your roof is still more negative. You're more net negative after 20 years. So the one with the least negative net present value is the one that has the battery. It's kind of like, if you look at the cost of the roof, you are net positive if you got somebody else to pay for the roof. but that's not practically going to happen. So it's not an option that's worth discussing. Denise.
Just lowering those peaks. That's hard.
That's factored into the battery. You don't get that really if you just do solar.
Can you repeat the question or the statement?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, she's saying, like, can we just isolate the peak shaving savings?
It's not just that you don't have to send the children home when the power goes out. It's actually a big benefit to just in terms of.
Right. So again, we could try to find, so I would say they did not isolate that in here. I think we can, well, actually, let's see. Utility savings is going to include the reduction in peak demand. So our utility savings over 20 years with the battery is 3 million, and without the battery is 2 million. It's pretty close. No, it's almost 3. Sorry, but this is also almost 4. So 3.8 million versus 2.9 million. So that's your difference in savings from utilities. But then there's other incentives, and that includes participating in some of the markets. Now, there are other incentives coming on in the grid, like in ISO New England, and I don't want Eric to get too started on this because I want everyone to go home. But like there are other programs coming along that we could probably participate in. We just don't know what they all are, what their terms are, but so we might try to do better. And this company that would be proposing to do this would also manage the battery for us. They would be the ones monitoring the market and dispatching and all that stuff. Yes, Eric.
Yeah. So this isn't a situation where you're just like, oh, let's put a battery in so that we have resilience, during an outage. This is a building that is utilized for emergency situations.
Yeah.
And one of those emergency situations is an electricity outage.
Yeah.
That is irreparable. So we're not the ones to decide this necessarily, but the city benefits from creating resiliency in an emergency building, one that they don't necessarily have. Now, they do have a generator that they can run, but that is not consistent with our desire to reduce emissions. So, I think this is a good project. I think this is actually a great project because you're utilizing the battery value to optimize the cash flow. You clearly have an infrastructure issue with the building roofing that needs to be replaced. That becomes part of this capital cost. So I think this is a good project, and I think pursuing it quickly so we can take advantage of ITC.
Yeah.
That creates a little bit of a struggle. We have to make sure our national grid is willing to fast track the permitting on the interconnection.
Fortunately, we have like this. Smith Folk is the one place kind of in all of Northampton that has just like a huge interconnection.
Oh.
It's just got so much capacity. It's just crazy. Yeah, and they're not using it as much as they could. So I like that argument. And so, I haven't gotten back the response from those guys. Essentially, what's the delta? What do we have to cover to get you to finance the rest such that the net present value for the project that is paying itself off in savings is 0 at 20 years. But whatever that increment is, the ask is basically, do we support asking the city to pay for that and calling it resilience?
Can I ask, how frequently is the city using it for resilience? Have we ever used it?
We have used it, I think was it 2013? There's your answer. I think Ice Storm. I may be wrong. There may be other ones. Yeah.
Also, we have the Resilience Hub, which downtown, which, you know, we need to put some money into, and trying to get more grants for that. So would this be competing with the Resilience Hub then? And
I mean,
Can I just, just a tag kind of off? I'm just curious. So in the report, it says all configurations include estimated 1 million for roof replacement. I guess in just my head and, thinking of other schools we've been evaluating that needs like roof replacements. I mean, 1 million is like, that's design, typically, so I'm just trying to, maybe the justification of looking at this is if Smith actually needs to replace the roofing on all their campus, I mean, you're talking more like millions of dollars too. Oh, just A and B.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a big difference. So never.
yeah, just buildings A and B.
Okay,
Everything else is either fine or not used for solar.
got it.
So I
Okay.
Put this on. But yeah, so they're just looking at those two buildings.
So I guess in response to your thought, which I think is a good one, and I've just picked up some information recently, and I don't know if it's accurate about the
questions.
that are going to come up.
Yeah.
But and tell me if this is correct, because I've just picked this up somehow. I don't remember, but like the Resiliency Hub is kind of like a $7 or $9 million project gap, like in terms of finding that funding. Is it somewhere around that amount?
I don't know the exact number, but I know it's up there.
It's large.
Probably not.
Yeah. But if the city's goals are to have a resiliency hub to accommodate our community in an emergency situation, and if that's a bigger kind of like time horizon to be able to meet those larger financial gains, and if we're only needing $1 million, is that what we're basically asking the city for the roofs of A and B to be able to do the
Less than
project, or even less?
I hope it's
500,000? Are we trying to catch this?
We don't have that
Yeah.
number, but let's, for our own purposes, let's ballpark
Yeah.
at 500.
It just seems like a step towards doing that. But I see what you're saying, and like that might be an increment towards this 7 million or 9 million that's needed for the resilience hub.
Mhm. And, the resilience up to it's downtown. It's if you're trying to help people that need shelter,
Yep.
getting out to Smith Folk is going to be more of a challenge for them.
Yep. Yeah, it's sticky.
So would I interpret you to be saying that it might be politically challenging because it directly competes with another priority?
Which is having, there's a lot of talk about that, the resilience hub.
Any advice?
I mean, I think it's a good idea to do it, and the more space we have to have people sheltered, the better we are. But if Smith Folk, would it be like a capital improvement project that they'd ask for, or would it just be like an additional funds that from the city to cover this?
There may be clever ways to structure that. So like if what it is that Smith Folk is paying off this this project over 20 years with its savings, then the city potentially could be also, create some sort of fund that is also paying that delta so that it's a smaller portion of the budget each year. I mean, I don't even know if that's a legit way to do things. But that might, like, that's how I'm thinking of it, as the way to make it so that Smith Voc can say that they're at zero in 20 years. And that, I guess, if you do it that way, at least you're competing less. Right?
Have we explored other state or federal resiliency hub grants and options of that sort?
So I know that Carolyn, who couldn't be here, she has pursued everything. I mean, like she's really, really just worked so hard on finding anything. I would bet that if there's something to be found, she's found it. Um, yeah, and all focused on the resilience hub. So this would, I mean, you could argue these serve different functions. This one, for instance, you can easily get multiple ambulances to, and has a lot of space for people in cots. If you imagine something like that, and it's right next to the hospital. There are a lot of kind of natural benefits, assuming you have vehicles to move people around.
Maybe it's looking at it too as like we have other centers around, so kind of I think the communication too around this is like there's kind of like this trifecta amongst CSO, MANA, these other members that are within the city, and you can really just view Smith Folk as one of those. So the Resilience Hub will be the hub in which it is, but Smith Folk is another one of those entities that is just playing a larger part too. The Resilience Hub, I think, has certain specifics that they're going to, reach towards, and Smith Folk is going to be kind of the instances that, hopefully rarely happen. And the hub is a daily basis. So maybe like viewing it in that perspective too, and just seeing kind of where that could align with the hub project.
So there are multiple factors to resiliency. You can't do it all with one tool. So yeah. Any other comments on this? Otherwise, I think I have my sense of direction from you guys on that. Okay. I think that's it for our agenda. Yeah. Oh yeah, department head updates, and there's only 2 department heads, and you were probably not even told.
I mean, just department head updates. I mean, our department and CAPA are obviously always collaborating. We have capital coming up, which we need to meet quite a few times, come up here soon to kind of project everything, which this meeting is beneficial to be a part of, to incorporate those things into. In regards to like specific projects that are actually happening right now, there's obviously the leads, which I know Ben has probably spoken on. We actually just mobilized with Kiter as our contractor for Forbes Library, where a reversible chiller is being put in, and basically we're switching that system to hot water system. So that's all starting. We mobilized this week, and the project will probably close out late spring of the year. Basically, our hope is to get the boiler switched over before the heating season. And then we'll do renovations within the interior, and then have the reversible chiller basically ready to go for when we need to have cooling for the summertime. So that's one of our projects that's kind of hit the ground going right now. I'm trying to think of any. I mean, we have other projects going on. I'm trying to think more so specifically related to, say, energy and mechanical. I would say that's probably our biggest one at the moment. I think our biggest objective is the long-term planning, and what our next steps are forward. And I know Ben and I have communicated on that, and I think hopefully we'll be able to kind of, with your guys' assistance as well, be able to paint that picture. So.
Thanks, Katie. So I mean, I guess I'll start my department update with a kind of a downer. So I put you guys through the request to vote on accepting that sustainable that Northampton, or the decarbonization plan. And it is a realistic plan, and included people actually visiting buildings and making careful analysis. But what it did not do was check all the boxes required by the Climate Leaders program from DOER. And so our application was rejected. And in a sense, that is my fault. So I didn't know what the requirements were going in. National Grid said, here, we're going to give you a free report. And I was like, okay, great. Give me free stuff. And so I did put a lot of effort and time into helping VEIC put their report together, instead of filling in a template that DOER created midway through this process. So I apologize for that, because obviously time not well spent from the perspective of getting that sweet, sweet DOER money. And so there is an application process to get free help putting together a plan that DOER will accept from DOER. And so I will apply for that, probably with Gabi's help, in November, which means that we will hopefully get a plan that will be accepted and will become climate leaders sometime in early-ish, maybe spring of 2026, if the rolling deadlines line up, I think. Meaning that we could apply for a $750,000 grant in October, if I think that's when the timeline would line up. And so it puts us about a half year behind where I hoped we would be. That's the news on that.
Can you remind us what projects that was going to cover and if it overlaps with any of the things you just presented?
It probably doesn't. It would either potentially fully cover the ground source of the ground ground loop exchanger at the library to make our investment in the chiller pay off. I think that would be a really good way to spend that money. It would almost exactly line up with the estimate for what it would cost for those boreholes. Whether Green Communities wants to do that, but it would be definitely hitting a target. It would either be that project or it would be a not fully developed project at probably either Jackson Street or Ryan Road to electrify and improve ventilation and do essentially the same basic tasks that exist at that Leeds that were almost done with in the old section of Leeds. I guess now I've got a little more time to develop those projects.
Don't be hard on yourself. I worked with OER for 20 years and they never do anything easily with anything. So it's not you.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is that the people who do it for free will not actually come out and look at any of our buildings. The plan does not have to be really based in reality. But it does have to tick the right boxes, and those are the boxes I want ticked. So anyway, yeah. So neither really changes too much what we're actually going to be doing. As you guys can kind of tell, we're just looking for opportunities, creating projects. I think, right, these are bigger ones, the ones we talked about today. But like that's kind of the scale we have to be operating on. So yeah, so that's the big news. I guess smaller news, but kind of very time consuming for us is that the motor pool is soft rolled out and is kind of basically working. We're about to enroll central services drivers and a vehicle, and then and on Friday we'll have the GPS devices, and about a month or so after that we'll have enough data to decide if maybe we can shed a vehicle. And we'll at least start to understand, are we getting more efficient with how we use the stuff we have? That's probably enough. Anyone want to move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Yeah. Did anyone second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Calling the roll. Rachel.
Yes.
Angie.
Yes.
Eric.
Approve.
Deb. Yes.
Ben. Yes. Katie.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.